And that's usually the downfall is there's no systematic way to do that. An owner doesn't come because they've never done it. They've never scaled, they're at 5 million. They've never been at 10 million. They don't
Mhm.
know what it's like. They don't know how to get there. And so as a result, if you don't have a systematic approach to actually finding the patterns so that you can pull those right levers,
Mhm.
then you're going to be kind of, if you ever saw the old Wizard of Oz, like the guy behind the curtain, and
I
he's
got
just, he's just back there
Wizard.
pulling things. You're going to be like that, and you're not going to know what actually is moving the needle.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Your Customer, Your Success. My guest today is Rion Westfall. Rion is the founder and owner of 537 Business Development and the Own Your Revenue program, where he helps small and mid sized businesses stop scaling chaos and start building profitable growth with healthy margins. He's built 9 companies across family businesses, solo ventures, joint ventures, and private equity backed disruptors. And he brings a rare mix of engineering discipline, global business development experience, and founder level grit to every conversation. Rion, welcome to the show.
Gary, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you. And yet another guest from the great state of Texas. I have lost count. I swear I'm going to just do a count. It's got to be 10. So Texas is leading the league in Your Customer, Your Success appearances.
Well,
So
you just need to make the move and join us.
I after this winter, let me know.
Right?
If you got any state brokers and dealers. Jesus, it was brutal. So it is springtime here, and we are thrilled about that. So, all right. So you have quite an interesting background, and we talk a lot about chaos on the show. Chaos is my enemy, right? If you don't know my disc profile, I'm kind of an SC, a green and a blue kind of thing, and I hate chaos. So you say most businesses scale more chaos than profits. So tell us from your perspective, what does that look like in real life inside a growing company?
In real life inside a growing company, I love this topic because most traditionally think, hey, if I'm scaling, everything scales evenly. And that's not the case. Every business that I've worked with, when you have a certain amount of chaos, and chaos can come in multiple forms. It might come in the form of your people. It might come in form of your process, how you're onboarding clients or lack of onboarding clients. And as you scale, for example, one example that you asked for is in your personnel, your own skill set of your people. As you're trying to grow a business, you might have employees that are very accustomed to supporting a $1 million business, a $5 million business, a $10 million business. They might be very good in that class or that section. But the moment you start to, hey, we want the 1 million to do 3 million. We want the 5 million to do 10. We want the 10 to do 20. When you start scaling and you start demanding more of accountability of those individuals, oftentimes their rate of growth, like you're trying to grow margin, you're trying to grow the business. You think, hey, I have, let's just say, $10 million and I've got a 10% margin or 8% margin, 12%, 15% margin, whatever it is. When you make that leap to 20%, if there's certain things that you're still doing as that $10 million company, most of the time that chaos will follow you, and you're not going to make 10% at 20 million because you made 10% at 10 million. Usually what happens is that margin's going to drop. That margin's going to sink to 8, 6, maybe even 5% due to the fact that 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 working ability of your people and your personnel, your process is still at that $10 million level. So that's what I mean by scaling chaos more than margin or profitability. And usually I find the comment is very common that once they get up to a certain level, the owner's looking back and said, "Man, I just wish I was a smaller company making the better margins I did back, back then." And that, I mean, that's a real statement that I received multiple times. And so that though, so sometimes they just wish they'd never scaled and they just wish they'd stayed smaller because it was less stressful. I
Mhm.
had better margins and it was happier because it was simpler.
Wow. That's interesting because I think a lot of people will default to, hey, we're just getting bigger. We're doing the same thing. We just got more customers, more margin, right?
Yep.
And so talk about the levers a little bit. What what are those levers that owners think will drive growth, but they don't, or the ones that are they're driving the growth and eating away at that margin? Like what are they missing? I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, the levers, part of the reason I created and founded, as you mentioned, the Own Your Revenue process is taking a step back. Revenue is like the blood of inside an individual. Revenue is the blood to a company. And just like our blood in our bodies, it's not just red liquid, right? It's got nitrogens, it's got oxygens, it's got, all these different elements that make it up. Our revenue is the same in business. There's so many different factors that make up our revenue. We have top line revenue, which we often associate rightfully with sales and marketing, but the bottom line is always affected by the operations itself. So I spent more than a decade traveling in 15 different countries doing audits and evaluations on businesses. And you see these patterns over and over and over again.
Mhm,
And to your point, when when we're when we're when we're trying to scale, when we're trying to go up, that aspect of just literally doing the same thing we've done to get from, if we're at 2 million, hey, we did it at 1, we got it to 2, or we did it to 2, we got it to 5, 5 to 10, whatever the case is. Those levers, finding those levers are going to be very, very critical to that growth for the sake of maintaining or increasing margin. If you don't know what's levers, and this is the biggest struggle I believe for most SMBs, anybody sub 100 million, is finding what those levers actually are, evaluating them. We have meetings, we've got this, we've got thoughts, we're following AI, we're following the trends. All of those things play a factor into the business decisions that owners make. But the hunt for the actual pattern, the hunt for the lever, what is actually going to change a certain spectrum? What's going to change an accountability piece within my business? How do I actually hunt for those patterns in an effective manner? And that's usually the downfall, is there's no systematic way to do that. An owner doesn't come because they've never done it, they've never scaled, they're at 5 million, they've never been at 10 million, they don't
mhm,
know what it's like, they don't know how to get there. And so as a result, if you don't have a systematic approach to actually finding the patterns so that you can pull those right levers,
mhm.
then you're going to be kind of, if you ever saw the old Wizard of Oz, like the guy behind the curtain, and
They
he's
got
just, he's just
what
back there
was
pulling things. You're going to be like that, and you're not going to know what actually is moving the needle.
interesting. So that's what you mean by hunting revenue patterns, yeah?
Correct.
And so that's what you're helping organizations do through your process.
100%. Yep.
Yep. So where I don't this is kind of a vague question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Where do you most often see the margins getting damaged?
Most of the margins getting damaged, it's kind of like a boat leakage.
Mhm,
It's things that are often already being done, or the efficiency of how they're being done within a company. Most of the time, businesses, they're headstrong into sales and marketing, which you need to be. I mean, you've got to have stuff coming into the door,
mhm.
but there's so much of a blind eye that is turned on the operations, on the efficiencies of the operations.
Yeah.
Most of the time for SMBs, I see, you mentioned this, guys wearing many hats. Yeah, they're wearing many hats because that was fine for the 1 million, 2 million, $5 million business. But now that you're trying to get to 10, there's got to be an element of accountability and delegation
Mm,
towards that future growth, toward that future size. And most owners, they've never done it, so they don't know how to do it.
mhm,
And so that's what the Own Your Revenue process is really about, is taking, one, identifying all of those patterns. I've got a whole system and process that helps within hours pull things out so that you're seeing your business in a different light than you've ever seen before, frankly. And as you do this, you realize real fast, as the owner, as the head leader wearing those many hats, this is not sustainable. If I try and grow, if I try and scale from today on anywhere near like what I'm doing right now, these are the reasons that are going to cause me, frankly, burnout.
Mhm.
These are the reasons that are going to cause me that when I get to 20 million, if I get to 20 million, I'm going to wish I was a $10 million business
Which
again.
that's exactly isn't that great? You hit 20,000,000. I wish I was back at 10. So now, what you key in on just that strikes a chord with me is the operational chaos because I've lived that for many years. And I know as your clients, it's great. Everybody wants to win the new client you bring it in. It's more work. It's more work for the operations team, who's not really getting rewarded for it financially. It's more work on their plate. And so the internal chaos just builds and builds. It's there. It's like Rodney Dangerfield. If you remember, hi heaviness. Remember talking about the heaviness he wakes up to every morning,
I
and there's the
haven't.
heavy. The heaviness is waiting for me, and I say, "Hello, heaviness." But that's what it's like. It's like the chaos. Hello, chaos. Here it is. Welcome. I'm going to work. I'm all fired up at work, and bam, chaos hits you right in the face as soon as you log on to your email.
Yep.
So, from your perspective, now we're a customer experience show. We're going to kind of try this together. Uh, Try to tie this together. How does that internal chaos eventually show up in the customer experience?
That is 100%. I like to think of it as a roadmap when we go on vacation. If you've ever gone on a road trip, or even just across town, depending on what city you're in, you'll plug in that address, you'll plug in that destination, and Google Maps they'll give you like three different routes, right? Here's the one with the paid toll roads. Here's the one with the car accident.
Uh-huh.
Here's the one with the construction, and almost inevitably, we always choose what? Hey, the easiest route. How am I going to get there the fastest? Similarly, and I love this aspect. It's one of the first things I do with businesses. We put together this customer roadmap. There's 6 different destinations that you hit. In fact, we just launched the app and it's got a free trial. And with the free trial, that everyone can go and do this on their own. Just log in and you could do this. But diving in and actually seeing where your customer goes through the different process, the different ways, writing it down. Very rarely have I seen any companies write it down. I have a phrase
Mhm.
that I say, if it isn't written down, it's a liability. If it is written down, it's an asset.
Mhm.
And you're carrying around liabilities if you haven't written this down. For example, you want to try and go scale, you're going to hire new employees. New employees are completely unfamiliar with your business. They have no idea who you are, what you serve, what your purpose is, the problem you solve that no one else, they have no idea. So if you haven't written it down, well, there's chaos, immediate chaos.
Mhm.
So why spend 6 months trying to train someone on the job when you can do it very quickly and efficiently within days or weeks?
Mhm.
And so to your point, that customer roadmap is absolutely critical. It's just like when we take a road trip. We're looking at that, we're saying, okay, where's the construction piece? Where's the detour? Where does smooth asphalt turn into rough gravel? Or where's the potholes? Where's the speed bumps? Every time a customer experiences any of that, just like when you're on a trip, what do you want to do? Find a different route. I want to go on a detour. I may want to turn around and go back home. I'm done with this journey. And
Mhm.
so that's very similarly that feel is what we have to be able to identify as part of our business for our customers.
Right. So great. So you're talking now in CX world, we get fancy. We call it a journey map.
Journey map.
And but I like but yours is simple and direct and to the point. Now you can do simple journey maps, and they're not really journey maps; they're presumptive journey maps. We've talked about this, or you can do a full fledged study into it. Um, so a presumptive journey map is more of you kind of just sit around and talk about it yourself. But if you really get into it, you go and you get your client's feedback, your customers' feedback. So how in depth do you get with now you're not calling it a journey maps and you're not a CX consultant. So I'm not going to hold you to the CCXP standards, but how far into it do you get? Do you do research and get feedback from clients? Or is it kind of, all right, internally where let's think through this process each step?
You first have to think through the process, how it's being done. For
Okay.
example, the very first question is, how does the customer find and initially interact with you? There's so many different ways that businesses are doing it, but we have to identify it. Do we go to events? Maybe we're one of those companies that we're always at trade shows and events and we're always getting stuff there. Maybe it's we have this huge cold reach. Maybe everything we do is warm referrals. And so we're heavy into referrals. Maybe it's our website and we're always pushing paid ads. Every company is different in how they're actually doing the business. And
Mm,
so the first thing is to map out, one, how is it being done? That's the easiest place to start. Now once you've noted and written that down, so you've got how you find and interact, how they hire or how the customer actually hires you, how you get onboarded, that's the third one, how you actually fulfill the production, that's the fourth one, how you deliver, that is the fifth one, and sixth one is how do they come back for more business, how do you get that repeat business and the testimonials that helps other people come into your business, kind of completing that ecosystem.
mhm,
Once you've been able to identify it, then that empowers you, right? The clarity is power, and the more clear we can be with certain things, it empowers us to make very educated decisions in moving forward. So in this case, like you said, once we've identified where it is, then we can start seeing, hey, here's a little bit of red on the map.
mhm,
Here's a place that's heavy construction, or maybe the road just doesn't exist, and we need to fill this out. We're losing clients here. We have this. Who's accountable for it? Right? There's a whole aspect in my mapping in the app. You'll see where you can map who's accountable for that. What is the percent complete that we are?
mhm,
How far in depth are we on this? So your aspect of actually, hey, now that we get that to our knowledge and we get this written down, we get it in front of us, there's so many changes we can make that we already know.
you know,
Like,
yep,
I mean, we don't have to go into this in-depth huge study with our clients to know it, because frankly we already know it. It's
mhm,
just, what are we doing about it?
mhm.
And if it's, again, if it's not written down, it's a liability. If it is written down, it's your asset. This becomes your asset that empowers you to make certain changes as you flow through the system.
Yeah. No, interesting, brilliant. Because yeah, there's different ways to do it, and there's different levels you can go hog wild with it. But at least make that effort. And I think it's an underutilized technique to really just think through what you're doing, and just even operationally said, if you're not going at certain, it's fine, because you're still going through what are you doing internally that's wrong, because you have all this operational chaos. So it's almost like sometimes even an employee journey map, right? To where are the employees struggling? Because what I feel with the growth and new clients and the operational chaos is just that people start losing accountability, and I'm too busy, it's not my problem, and it's not my job, and things start falling through the cracks, or the things that once you start growing, you have new clients, new problems, new things, and nobody owns it. So me being a client person, well, I have to own it, but I don't necessarily have a solution, because I can't hire five new accountants, or five new representatives over here. I've got to deal with what I've got, and I have no say over the matter. So that to me has always been where the operational chaos starts to drive you crazy and break down. But that's where the customer experience falls apart, because you've got people saying it's not my job, and it's going to take longer to get a response, even though you own it and you step in. You, Now things take longer. The answers aren't very good. People are busy. They come to meetings unprepared in front of clients, or they say, I have to get back to you. I don't know. You know what I mean? So it does that ring a bell to you?
100% it rings a bell. Accountability. I was thinking about this here the other day. Accountability to self. That's that's the string that confidence is bound with, and customers know when someone is confident.
Mm.
Customers know when the people they're working with, are they confident that they're going to get the results that they're promising me,
Yep.
that they're going to be able to deliver? They know it. If you've ever been around, it's a strange nature effect, but if you've ever been around certain dogs or horses or things like that, they have a sense as
Mhm.
to, when an individual is an animal lover or an animal hater, and it very similarly, customers know when you're confident, when you have an accountability platform to yourself, you're going to build that confidence. If you don't have a way to keep yourself and people accountable for results, then confidence is going to wane. It's going to decrease, and like you said, that's to me, that's one of the number one patterns to showing, or as you scale, you're just going to scale more chaos than you are ever your profitability or your margins.
Yeah, and so do you help with that? Do you help get, to get this mindset instilled in that company culture just to get the employees to think like problem solvers instead of, all right, I'm showing up for a paycheck, not my job, not worrying about it.
100%. That is exactly why I actually developed the app. Last year I was interviewing people because I was putting this into a book, and that was my process. I was interviewing businesses, and we were going through the process like I've done many times before. But I realized this component was probably the number one component that was missing in these businesses'
Mm,
ability to scale, right? As an owner, as a leader, what you're trying to do is you're trying to build a culture. You're trying to build a culture around revenue. You mentioned people coming in for a paycheck. I have one client, wasn't a client, but he was a friend of mine long time ago. And this lesson sticks with me because he was trying to sell his business, and it was kind of in the manufacturing space. They did very
mhm,
specialty stuff, and he was trying to sell it and couldn't get anybody really to buy it. So he chose the route of an ESOP, an employee stock owned
mm,
business. And
mhm.
at first I thought, is there any money in that? Like, are you going to make any money? Like, you just sold it to your employees.
Yeah.
But his comment to me about the things he noticed, literally month one and month two, once he turned it over to an ESOP, he said, I didn't change any of the employees. He says, but I went around the shop and I started noticing it was cleaner. The bolts and the scrap and the this and the that and everything that was laid out, they were actually taking care of it. They were accounting for it because they know at the end of the year, their bonus depends on, oh, did we have extra cost in buying more bolts because we just discarded this? Just all of the little things that add up to the success of the business. He said it was amazing to him that once they had ownership, once they had accountability that translated into the paycheck and it wasn't just the 9 to 5, he said that the culture just changed. And he said, I'd owned the company for, in that case, I think it was like 25 years, 30 years. And so that lesson has always stuck with me. And I built this app, this platform around that same concept of how do we empower our people. You've got your general manager, you've got your floor supervisor, you've got your field guy, you've got your salesman, you've got office personnel that are constantly, dealing with the AP and AR, all of this different stuff. There's leakage everywhere in your
Mhm.
business.
Oh,
So
yeah.
being able to go around and tighten it up and hold all of the people accountable to where they can see that improvement, to me, that is the biggest aspect of being able to create that culture. So inside the app, it's wonderful. You can see bar charts, you can see percentages, you can see
Mm,
all this kind of stuff. And when people see that, it's written down, it's there in front of them, it's 24/7 live. That's an asset. And that asset drives people to grow. You know as well as I do that if I'm monitoring something, I'm much more likely to actually do something about
yeah,
it.
yes.
I mean, I was talking
And
with my wife just this morning about weight. I'm just, I've been eating more
oh,
food and I've been gaining weight. Like, well, okay, if I get on the scale and I look at that number, I'm going to be much more motivated to actually do something about it than if I just never actually looked at the number.
mhm. Sadly, I am all too familiar with that problem. So, let's go back to I like the ownership thing because one of the sayings I can't stand in business is act like an owner. I hate it because let me tell you what. We went into a client one time and we said, "Oh," because that was the big rage. This was a few years back, and the CFO said, "Bullshit." And I said, well, he goes, "Are you paying them like an owner? Yeah. How can you expect your employees to act like owners if you're not paying them like an owner?" So I like saying think like an owner, right? Because you can't unless you're a very small business, you can't, especially in a big company, expect people to act like an owner because you can't actually act like an owner
Right.
does. And an owner can hire people, fire people, give up bonuses, change structure, compensation structures, whatever. change vendors. You can't do any of that. So how can you act like an owner? Doesn't make any sense. I'm a literalist when I got this. That must be the C part of the SC in my disc profile. But it's think like an owner and then act like a leader is what I say. So that's my saying. All right. So now I'm going to throw a curveball at you because we've got a few minutes left in the traditional interview segment of this, and you were a baseball player, right?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to throw a change up at you. You know, this is my change up. I love this question. It's totally shifting gears, but I want to ask you: how often is the issue not the execution, but a lack of clarity around what the problem the company's facing actually is?
I would give that probably a 70-30.
Yeah.
So 70% around the lack of clarity, being able to see it in your mind. It's not the execution. I even go back to my kids. I've got 4 kids, and the idea when they come back, my teacher doesn't explain how to do this math problem. It's it's not the kid's execution of the math problem that sucks. It's their understanding of it. It's the clarity behind the principles that are driving the execution to be able to find the right answer on the paper, right? It's the understanding, it's the comprehension of where's my place? Where do I fit in? How the hows and the whys, right? The hows and the whys uh, bring about that clarity. And when that clarity is in place, then it is so much simpler for execution to
Yep.
actually happen.
Yeah. And even the way you describe, we've had guests talk about the way you describe things as a manager. To be clear about what you're doing and why and how to do it. And the analogy, it was the wonderful Alyssa Nolte was cooking with her 5-year-old or whatever, 5, 6-year-old, I forget. And she was cooking spaghetti and she told her to, okay, water's boiling, throw in the spaghetti. What did she do? Threw the spaghetti and 3 strands of spaghetti got in the pot and the rest of it went over and it's burning on the stove and everything. But she did what she said. She told her to throw in the spaghetti, right? So it's the throw in the spaghetti analogy when she said what you actually meant to ask your employee there was to carefully place all the spaghetti in the pot and do not burn yourself.
That reminds me, if you ever look it up, how to make a peanut butter jelly sandwich. There's a guy,
Yeah.
one of his
Yeah.
videos went viral. He asked his 2 kids, and his 2 kids, he just went back and forth, and he was doing exactly as they said and placed the jelly on. And so he just grabbed the whole container of jelly, just put it, you
Yep.
know.
So I'm speaking of baseball. I love coaching baseball, and I'm back to coaching a 9-year-old. My little guy's 9, and we had our first practice last night and they were wonderful. They did great, but you forget how literal they are because I've been coaching my 14-year-old who's like super advanced now, right?
Right.
And you talk about this and you could do it, and it's like they do everything literally. So it's a great reminder of I've got to ratchet it back and speak clearly, and they're going to take everything I say very literally.
Very literal.
And they did. So it was quite a unique night. All right. So no interview is complete without bringing up these two dreaded letters, A and I. The world's looking for leaders. Leaders are looking for AI to solve growth problems. What do they need to fix on the human side before they even think of this AI stuff? Or I guess what I'm really asking is where does AI implementation come into your practice? Is probably it. Maybe that's a better question. Let's go with that.
I think that's a great question. For those, and I'll also put in a plug. We've built this app for people to come into. We've just launched the trial version so people can go in and free and kind of test it out.
Mhm.
I'm actually building. I call them Rico, but Rico is going to be working within the app for that purpose. There's AI automation apps, those are all tools, but oftentimes it's kind of like that fishing syndrome, where just shiny object, I'm going after the shiny object. I see way too often the aspect of they see the tool and the tool comes with the description, and then they say, hey, I like that description, I'm going to go after that tool. Whereas to me, it should be the other way around.
Mhm.
There's enough. You talked about customer. We already spoke about the customer roadmap. There's very specific things that the customer is going to ask of your company, either on the production side, on how they want, the customer wants their road paved a certain way. And
Right.
it's your job to pave it that way. So to go off and just to buy tools for the sake of, maybe let's just use that analogy, paving tools, like, no, you want to create the tools that are going to allow you to pave it the way the customer wants, the way that the customer needs. So I look at the AI, I look at the automation, I look at those tools and those skill sets as something that should be identified as, we need this, not, hey, there's an AI that exists, let's buy it and let's purchase it, let's bring it in.
Yep.
Because that creates more chaos, is when we just go out, we just start buying this off
Right.
the
Yep.
shelf, off the shelf, off the shelf. But if we can identify the solution that we're trying to solve that is needed,
Mhm.
then go and incorporate the AI custom, if you will, uh, built to solve that problem to help us there.
Right. I think everybody puts the proverbial cart before the horse, and they're
Yep.
saying, "Hey, how do I implement AI? What can I do with AI? Because everybody's got AI. And I must implement AI because it's the age of AI. So we have to implement AI. And what are we doing about AI?" And that doesn't do any makes any sense. It's, what do we need to solve? What are we trying to solve? What problem are we trying to solve? What problem are we trying to solve? Or operationally, and what I've said all along, and by all along I mean during the course of the show, is really operationally it's a tool for your employees more than anything.
Yep.
Customer people don't like to put AI in front of clients unless you're like literally an AI company and that's what you do, because help with chaos that we're talking about. And
Uh,
I think you could use it to find um, efficiencies there and do that. But you gotta be careful with it because it still makes mistakes. And I wrestle, even though I have my own agents, I know how to do that. And it still makes mistakes on simple stuff. So like writing show notes for a podcast. Uh, I mean, I might as well just hand write them, but I try to put it in, I edit them, and I don't just give you AI slop out there, people. I say, here's give me show notes, and I edit them, and I say and I go in it. But it's like the format is wrong all the time, even though I program the format in. So it worries me sometimes what people are actually using it for. So and
Absolutely.
yeah. So all right. So we're gonna wrap the traditional interview portion of the show with that one. But we've got to hit the segments. Let's roll. All right, everyone. It is time for Does It Hold Water, my favorite segment. This is where I ask our guests to be our resident Mona Lisa Vito, so to say, and be our expert witness for the day. I'm going to read them a quote. They have no idea what I'm going to ask them. It could be a quote from anywhere, thought leadership, LinkedIn, someone famous. And they're going to tell me whether or not the quote holds water. Why or why not? Ready? Simple quote from the defense today, Ryan. It's about treating your customers right. Your first responsibility in business is to be nice, even when under pressure. Be professional and keep the relationship positive. Does the defense case hold water?
Keep the relationship positive. I would say true. Keep the relationship positive. But there's a small caveat I would say with that, and it most of the time, probably 90-95% of the time, that's going to be the case. There's going to be the offshoot where, when that situation turns quote unquote ugly and the other person is trying to do harm, where you do need to defend yourself, and sometimes that defense can require you to remove yourself from a situation. But by far and large, most of the time, good solid communication can keep us on the positive with virtually everyone out there.
But it's your first responsibility in business to be nice.
The definition of nice would be my question there. I think the first responsibility would be to be truthful, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes nice can be seen as, hey, I have to be uh, cordial to their liking all the time and satisfying their needs. I don't think that's true.
Hmm.
Our responsibility, especially if we're in a mentor, coaching type consultant position, is to be very candid and truthful,
Hmm.
even if sometimes that niceness, you can still be truthful and be nice.
Got it.
But yes, your our first responsibility is being more true and direct.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the question we just talked about before, and it's that clarity. Sometimes you just it's you have to be clear with a client what the expectations are and what they aren't, and you can't just say yes to everything, right? Because
Absolutely.
you there are times when a client will ask you to do something that might actually not work for them, right? They think it's going to work, or they're going to ask you to do something that's way 10 times more work for you than it should be if they would just consider the alternative, which they don't realize is a better alternative. So it's not about being nice and saying, yes, client, absolutely, that's wonderful. It's there's a better way to do this. Like, can we consider doing this? And you don't have to lead with, it's going to cost us 10 times the work if we do it that way. But it might, and that might lead to higher charges or what have you. But um, yeah, I think it's all about being clear and setting the right expectations with clients, not just setting unreasonable expectations. Another saying I hate. I love talking about sayings I hate is under promise and over deliver. I hate that one.
I
I just hate it. Like, just God. And you never want to overpromise. I think what I'm talking about here is more overpromising, just to be nice, or to get the sale,
Right, right.
right? And so that's what to me. That's why this is why I like this simple little quote. It's not always about saying, sure, we can do that, absolutely, and then going to your team and saying, hey, we told them we can do this. We can't do that. Well, how are we going to do it? Just do it. I told them, right? And there, now you're scaling, you're building, you're growing, and you just threw all sorts of chaos at your operations team. So,
Yep. You have to stay true to yourself and your team. You have to know what problems you solve that no one else does, and the client is looking to you as an expert
mm,
in whatever field you're in. They're looking to you as an expert. So be that sounding wall. Be to them what you would want others to be to you. If I'm going to look to a CPA, if I'm going to look to a legal attorney, if I'm going to look to a doctor, I'm going to expect them to be proficient and tell me the things that I don't know.
yeah, yeah,
So that I can
question.
do better. I
Right,
mean, it's pretty simple.
right, right. Sometimes that doesn't always happen. So, all right, awesome, good one. I thought that was an interesting one, and it was. All right, let's hit chip shots. Okay, everybody, it is time for chip shots. These are my shorter form, more personal yet still professional questions. We always ask people the book question. Ryan, give us one book that has significantly influenced you, personal, professional, either. You take it.
Oh, there's a lot of books out there, but one of the ones here recently, I would say, is The Missing Secret by John Mitchell. John dives into and piggybacks off of the most successful book out there, which is, or most purchased book on success, which is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Hmm,
And John piggybacks off of this, the missing secret within that. And he goes into a lot about the mindset and
hmm.
about training your subconscious, how 95% of all of our decision making is made by our subconscious. And so
Really?
if that's the case, and science and everything proves this, if that's the case, it's kind of like an athlete. We all love, at, at, athleticism. If one muscle was responsible for 95% of your athletic production, what would you do to or for that one muscle? You'd stretch it, you'd take care of it, you'd ice it,
Hmm,
you'd train it, you would make it stronger. Very, very similarly, how do we do that with our subconscious? And so I love John's plug into that. He's actually teaching at the University of Texas, and their coaching programs and everything they've instigated in there. It's had so much success, and how to do this. He's just done it here within the last couple of years.
hmm.
But John Mitchell, The Missing Secret,
That that is interesting. 95%? Really?
95% of all your decisions are made with your subconscious.
Wow. I would not. I mean, I think it's hugely important. I would have 95%. Uh,
95%. He has a program called, I call it Tibby, Think It Be It, TIBI. But he dives into that, and I can tell you I've implemented stuff for my own personal life. It was so good for me. I took it to my wife. I've taken it to my kids. I mean, like it really really does a good job.
Yeah, I would have never guessed 95. Now I'm big on all this stuff, and I talk a lot about my book I pick is Golf is Not a Game of Perfect, by Dr. Bob Rotella, but it's the same concept, but I don't think I ever got to 95% is your subconscious. But it's just that, and I've talked about it on the show probably enough that listeners that listen in are probably going, here he goes again with golf. It's not a game of perfect. But it's, don't if you sit there and look at the water, oh geez, there's water, don't hit it left. No, you have to, you know what I mean? It's thinking positive. So that's kind of the pre-work to it. Like I am gonna
Yep.
play great today, right? Before you go to bed, thinking through your round, envisioning yourself shooting a 64 or something like that, I bet. So, wow, that's an interesting one. Cool. All right. So, this, I have no, sometimes I can guess, or at least come close with my guest answers, but I have no idea where you're going to take this one. I love this leader question. Give us a leader you'd love to shadow for a day, a current leader, and what would you hope to learn from them?
There's a gentleman out in California. His name is Chad Willardson, Pacific Capital, and he heads a program called Elevated. And a couple years ago, I started being aware of him, and I just really like his stuff. One of the thoughts or questions that I had when I came upon him was, you know, how do the greats think? It was my question for the year. And in order to enhance my own ability, how do the great things? And so I ended up across him. And he's heavy into the financial aspect, and, he serves publicly. He does stuff personally. He's got 6 kids or something like that. So big family.
Mhm,
But I really like his approach, his just simple approach. Hey, I'm the patriarch of my home.
mhm,
I'm also this businessman. I have these responsibilities,
mhm,
and just the way his program, I haven't participated in it, but elevated and thinking, okay, yeah, how do we elevate ourselves? How do we actually know that it's now April of 26? How am I going to actually elevate myself in May of 26, in June of 26? How do I do that as a husband, as a father, as an entrepreneur, as a businessman? It covers, all spectrums. And so that's something that's really important to me. And so I'd love to shadow and work with Chad at some point.
That's an interesting one. I don't know who that is at all, and, this is why I asked the question. It's just fascinating to see what people come up with. Awesome. Great one.
Yep.
All right. The failure question. I love this one. Is there a particular experience or failure early in your career that taught you a valuable lesson?
Oh, the one that comes to mind is I had just left the Department of Defense, big corporate world, and I went
Mm,
to kind of the smaller business world of mechanical engineering. And this EPCM, engineering procurement construction management firm, had hired me, and I was filling the role as their chief cost estimator for these large, what they call 43101, or feasibility, bankable feasibility reports.
mm,
And so had a lot of responsibility on my shoulders there. And they had placed a certain manager over me at that point, a senior fellow. And I remember I came into one work one day, and he's sitting there with the owner and calls me into the conference room. And three of us are sitting there, and he says, I have reason to believe that your time card is inaccurate. And he slides the time card, a paper copy of it. He says, I want you, and he, with a red pen, he says, I want you to make the changes necessary and sign at the bottom. And I, I didn't even look at it. I just signed at the bottom and I pushed it right back at him. I said, everything there is exactly, the way that it is. And unbeknownst to him, we had a certain client that lived in another time zone. I would get calls on my cell phone almost 4 days a week at about 4:30 in the morning.
mhm,
So I completely changed my schedule to come in early in the morning. And so I'd leave at, 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon because I was there earlier. And this guy was a rigid 9 to 5er. Like,
mm,
you don't come in before 9 and you don't leave after 5.
mhm,
And I remember thinking, well, if that's the case, I guess I need to go somewhere else. So within about 3 weeks later, I had already had my next job, and I turned in my resignation letter. The owner calls me in and he says, I'm sorry, we've made a mistake. This should have never happened. Da 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 da. We'll give you a raise to stay, and we'll do this, and we'll do all this. And just on principle, I just says, I sorry, I can't do that. I've already committed to this next guy. But I said, this was, a problem. I said, and you approached it completely wrong. So as I learned from that, being on that employee side, right, I've learned, man, you've got to be careful how you approach your employees, how you approach their time. There's, stuff is going on in everybody's lives. I mean, that was a point in time where, yeah, I had just had my second child of 4, and literally a week after she was born, I was away running construction management for this company in Mexico for, a month and a half, and all this other, it's like I wasn't just a a no-go employee. Like, I was
Yeah,
doing my stuff. And
doing
so
stuff.
it was real telling to me how to handle employees.
So that really shaped your experience, and you could see it come through in your work now. So that is fascinating. That is a
Yeah.
great one. Thank you for that. All right, we got time for one more quick one. What is one question you always ask customers or clients that never fails to reveal something new?
A question that never fails to reveal something new. On a personal level, I like to ask, what patterns illustrate you these last 30 days? If we were to just dive back, just in the last 30 days, nothing else, what patterns would we see in your personal life, in your business life? What patterns would describe you the best just these last 30 days? And that's depending on how deep you want to dive into that, that's
Mm.
usually always a very telling. It always leads to follow-up questions,
Oh,
either
I'm sure. Yeah,
business or personally.
get
But
them talking.
that's a great place to start, that I enjoy asking.
That's an interesting one. I like that a lot because they're going to know where the pain. The pain's going to show up there, right? Because you need to know sometimes where your client's pain is so you can help them, and that's a great one for discovering their pain. Good for you. Awesome.
It's kind of like that doctor. If you've ever went into a doctor when you were a kid, and you hurt your arm, you hurt your elbow, whatever it is, and the doctor, hey, honk, does this hurt? Just
Yeah.
you're like, "Ah, why'd you do that?
Yeah.
Just leave me alone." Like, yes, that hurt. And
When
so,
in
like,
the old days, especially, yeah, they're a little bit more careful
uh,
now with it. My God, but this, yeah, right here, yeah,
uh,
that's the spot. Just so, oh
throw
God,
throw some mud on it, you'll be fine.
the other stuff. Oh God, yeah, the stories my mom teaches told me about some of the things doctors told them when we were kids. My brother was it's crazy. It's like really, but they were doctors. They were licensed.
That's
So,
Yep.
all right. Seriously, this has been super fun. Rion Westfall, tell everybody where they can find you. You have been a wonderful guest.
Awesome. Thank you, Gary. I'm found on LinkedIn. That's my most predominant. If you go to app.ownyourrevenue.com, app.ownyourrevenue.com, you'll see there logins for the free trials, be able to see the program, start to see what it is. And there's a whole bunch of stuff there that's available and still forthcoming as we speak right now.
Awesome. What an interesting business. This has been a super interesting conversation. Thank you all for joining us today on your customer success. We will be back with more customer experience leaders, customer success leaders, and I do throw you a change up every now and again. So that's all for today, folks, but bye for now. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We hope you found something insightful that will enhance your experiences and drive your success. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a review and share your thoughts to help us improve the show. Don't forget to head on over to marracxhub.com for more ways to connect with me and learn more about experience management. Until next time, I'm Gary Marra, working hard for your customer and your success.